Tonight on 60 Minutes, we expose the biggest espionage story in American history. It's of a man who fooled his workplace and his family for 80 years. Until tonight. You'll hear from his colleagues, from his family members, even from people who know nothing about him.
In a world, in a continent, in an office in a city, this office behind me, everyone thinks this is Perkins Eastman Architects. But is this really Brad Perkins, the architect best known all over the world? We have more answers than questions. Ty, when did you first suspect Brad was not a real architect?
Well, he was always drawing on napkins, and really, what type of architects draw on napkins, for Christ's sakes?
He claimed his name is Perkins. He claimed he came from a long line of architects. I looked it up in the Chinese encyclopedia, and I could not find a single Perkins architect anywhere.
You know, I found it kind of somewhat suspicious because most architects, they seem to collect things that are related to architecture per se. You know, engravings, floor plans, maps. But little lead soldiers? Pigs? I mean, come on, Brad. Really?
Well, one thing that caught my attention, each country he went for a business trip later collapsed. He went in Lebanon in the 70s, civil war. Went to Iran, the regime collapses. Business in in Brazil, the economy tanked. A job in Argentina, a coup with generals. One time he was supposed to go to Yugoslavia, and the day before the whole country started to fight. And don't get me started on Israel, China.
There was even this one time where he brought a Chinese client and Paul Manafort was in the room. I mean, I saw it with my own eyes.
Some of the places he goes are so secretive that he covers my eyes with a bandana while he drives.
At one point, he would come back from his foreign trips and call me Money Peggy, like I was James Bond's secretary. Our code name for him was Mr. Magoo.
Another red flag for me was the fact that he does not want you to know that many years ago he did some business with Donald Trump. Now, why do you think he is hiding that fact? And what exactly was the business they did together?
So, our security cameras once caught him taking some boxes home with top secret documents illegally from the office. We have one photo of them on the floor of his room at home, and you can see it shows highly sensitive information.
Who's he spying for? That's a good question. I have my suspicions, but I really don't want to say anything. But think about it. He loves Chinese food, Italian movies, Indian weddings, Vietnamese outfits, Korean martial arts, and he has an Israeli son-in-law. I'm not sure on this subject.
We came to the office to see if he's here, like he claimed to, but...
Here you go. The proof is here. He's never here.
In our second part of the story, we look at how the so-called Scarsdale architect managed to fool his family into believing he was who he said he was not. Was or not. Confused? So are we. Or are we? We are not.
Our investigation took us to this quiet, hidden street in low-key, blue-collar suburb of New York. In this house behind me, there's a man everybody think is Brad Perkins. But is he really? 80 years old, married, 3 daughters, 2 cars? As our story continues, you'll see more unanswered answers to the answers we don't have.
The first thing spies do is they build a fake character, a fake past, a backup story, sort of. So the story he told was that he was from Evanston, Illinois. And I can tell you, there is no Evanston, Illinois. How do I know? From Ohio.
Know how else you cover your traces? You change religions. So he switched from being a Christian to a Jew. And that is so smart to become a Jew because, as history proves, no one suspects the Jews of anything bad.
So he went to college for 6 years. 6 years? I mean, really? You have to be sort of a dilettante to take that long and graduate with just 1 degree.
Dad also has this imaginary friend from college, Kenneth Dreidel or something like that. And we think it's his handler or some fake name he must have used in one of his missions. He talks about him all the time. We just nod with our head.
So now we know that most of his 6 years was actually spent in training. Apparently, he was learning how to pursue someone and subtly convince them to follow his plan of action.
I find it suspicious that the Cubs had not won a World Series since 1908, and then the one time he's out of the country in China, we were on the phone telling him the score of the game. It goes into extra innings, and all of a sudden, the Cubs win the World Series.
Saba uses the framing tactic when he wants to smuggle sensitive secrets out of China. Here, let me show you.
So, I'm the designated inheritor of Brad's pigs. I mean, I collect pigs because I'm an eccentric. You know, my college frisbee team is called Little Piggies. I like to farm. But Brad? Eccentric? No, I don't think so.
So you tell me if this makes sense. Folks, I drove 1,000 miles. I put in an 80-hour week. I traveled 22 nights this month. And yet I never missed a daughter's soccer game. Come on. Only someone who has a body double could do that.
Each morning, I see him going out in his white robe and collects his New York Times that has coded assignment, his orders for the next mission. Then based on that, he changes the directions of the cow weather vane.
One time in China, he recruited one of his top agents and then sent her to live and work in Germany undercover. Her codename, DHNH.
Yeah, DHNH, daughter he never had. They are best friends. They do TikTok movies together.
It's also very clear that certain people are deeply intimidated by him. There was one so-called client from China who I had never met, but he was somehow invited to my wedding.
He was invited to my wedding too.
And instead of giving us a normal wedding present, he gave us a blood diamond.
All I got was a gold chubby baby statue. Ridiculous.
I believe they call it the Chung diamond.
When I think back on it now, I realize that the amount of Willie Nelson Dad played while sitting in his library was probably his way of driving us away so that we didn't hear him talking to his handler. Or maybe there were coded messages. I don't know. It was a lot of Willie.
So one of the ways he covers up his secret missions is that he takes his daughters or his son-in-laws on trips in foreign countries. With his son-in-laws, we've gone to places and he'll say, I've got to go to the museum, and then he'll be back later in the day.
To me, this obsession with Taekwondo is particularly suspicious. And now we know that it was only a cover to study the Korean language, so one day he could befriend Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, the black belt was the way they were rewarding him for all of his missions, and every dan represents a killing.
I can't talk about any specific mission behind enemy lines, but I can share that for one of those missions, he got the Dumpling Award. He terminated his target and still had time to eat 47 dumplings before returning safely to base.
In his basement, he has a big wine cellar. But really, it's a torture chamber. When he interrogates people, he feeds them cheap wine. How do I know?
Brad even told me his secret code name. Saba!
Brad Perkins is a multi-layered, complicated, and sophisticated man, and for 80 years he was able to keep his life story secretive. Not anymore. His legend may continue for many years to come. Or will it? We'll never know. Perhaps we will. But just maybe, not. From all of us here at 60 Minutes, happy birthday, Brad Perkins.